So here we are now with our machine repositioned over the panel, which has been rotated and sitting happily on the trestles, and we're going to lower this down into position shortly. Again, panel balance is critical. We're still in the middle of the panel, so when we apply suction and lift this panel, it's going to lift it flat and level. If at this stage you want to induce a pitch on the roof, you can offset the machine slightly towards the top end of the panel, and when it lifts off the trestles, it will lift on angle there. So that's a matter of experimentation. You don't need to offset by a great degree to induce a pitch on the roof, but you'll need to experiment with that, and once you get that measurement, you can replicate it on each panel lift, and you can actually lift at the pitch you want. But remember what I said, there's really a practical limit of around about 15 degrees on the roof pitch, but it's at this stage that you induce that pitch by offsetting the machine. So we're now going to lower the machine down so the suction pads are in contact with the panel surface again. Now, the issue of the machine weight is critical right now because this panel is spanning between the trestles, and if we allow the weight of this machine to bear onto this panel, it will deform, damage and bend the panel. So we're making sure that the weight, the buffers here, are not in contact with the panel surface. We've loaded enough so that the rubber seals around the suction pads are actually on the surface. So please be careful with that. It's worth crane drivers taking note to lower this machine gently, otherwise you're going to end up with some bent panels. So Neil's going to apply suction now. He's going to press the button. I'll show you the suction pads. And again, you see that they pull themselves down onto the panel surface. And obviously, as you can see, the seals will mold themselves over the stiffening ribs without too much problem there. But if you do have difficulty getting suction, it's probably because you haven't got the pads bearing properly on the panel surface. Okay? Probably worth noting at this stage that with all vacuum lifters, you need to make sure that the panel surface is free of any film. So if the panels arrive at site with a protective film, it must be stripped, particularly where the suction pads are going to locate. Also, you need to make sure that the panels are clean, they're free of dust and debris. Again, if you've been cutting on site, you may need to clean the area where the suction pads are going to locate. And there are particular issues with frost and ice as well, which some documentation we can provide you with will refer to that. But the actual suction pads need to be in close contact with the panel surface. Going back to the first of these series of videos, we talked about water on the panel. So if it's raining, please take sensible precautions to wipe the excess water away from the area where the suction pads are going to locate. But don't worry, any moisture that gets sucked up, again, will go along the vacuum hoses and will accumulate in the reservoir separator here. So now we've got the machine under suction on the top surface, we're ready to lift to the roof. At this stage, we apply our secondary safety straps. Now, safety straps are compulsory. They're not optional. So when you're lifting overhead on a construction site, you must use the secondary safety straps. They simply loop around the panel. There's a quick release pin there where the loop goes into it, and you can adjust the length of the safety strap. Now, you want the safety strap snug, but not over tight, because you need to be able to get that loop in and out of the pin quite easily. So the safety straps are applied at both ends, and now you're safe to lift this panel up onto the roof. And as it lands close to the roof and you're positioning the panel onto the steel work, at the last moment you can release the safety straps just by pulling the pin. The strap will fall away and you can then lower and position the panel. Okay, so we'll just put that back in there. And remember what I said earlier, you don't release suction until the panel's on the roof surface and secure, and then when you're happy to do so, release suction by pressing the two red buttons, but immediately do that, the actual machine will let go of the panel, so just don't release suction until you're happy and it's safe to do so. So just to show you, we'll just lift the panel clear of the trestles. And that now could go to the roof to be installed. And normally what would happen is that the very next panel in the pack will already be the correct way up. Ours is upside down again because we've been handling the panels. But the next panel would normally be the correct way up, so you simply get suction on the weather surface of that panel, lift it directly to the roof. And then the third panel will be upside down again, and you repeat the process we've talked through. So that's essentially the Rota Boy, and I'm going to stop the video and then just come back at you with a final brief video about a few do's and don'ts.